right.
Where are you broadcasting to?
So you have to pay to broadcast to more than one place. So right now it's broadcasting to Facebook, and I'm turning on my screen recorder right now. And then I'm going to post it to whatchamacallit later, YouTube. I'll post it to YouTube like tomorrow or something. Probably tonight. Entire screen window. I just want that window. Dope. Let me make sure this thing is set to public. And then we'll be good to go. All right. Hey, we got a guest.
On Facebook right now.
Yep. I just got to make sure it's a public video, not private. Edit video. Because otherwise nobody can see it except for people that are like friends of, oh, there we go. Public. Anyone on or off of Facebook. There we go.
It's literally broadcasting live right now on Facebook.
Yep.
That's pretty tight.
Right? This thing is so cool. I got into this because there was I've been watching dog trainers, right? So I started listening to them just like talk to each other, right? Because like so much, it's kind of the same in fighting, right? Like so often, so much of what we're talking about, we can just talk about, right? But then there's another separate time where you need bodies moving. But most of dog training, what about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Do I just have bad connection? Most of dog training isn't actually about the dog. It's about like educating the owners. So I get more from these like conversations between experts than I do from watching videos where they're actually working with dogs.
I know what you mean.
So that was
I do the same thing. Like
go ahead.
When if I heard the question right, when I'm watching something about painting, they'll say something that'll resonate with the world that we live in every day, more so than if I'm listening to like some commentator, Dominic Cruz or DC, talking about fighting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like it triggers different parts of your brain that you can kind of like you can bring it back. So let's get started for real. Anybody who doesn't know, this is the first installation of my podcast. This series, I'm going to interview a series of experts within their respective fields, seemingly starting with combat sports, predominantly focused on mixed. Damn, breaking like
your audio lag. There's a lag in your audio.
There's a lag in my audio.
That's that Army base Wi-Fi right there.
No, we pay for dope ass Wi-Fi, but I'm gonna close everything else out just to make sure. Close that. Can't close that. It might be because of the screen record. System audio track not fine. This isn't even recorded. The system. Audio track not found. What the fuck? Okay. Well, I guess I'm not doing the screen record. I'll just figure that part out later. Damn. How am I going to do this if I'm breaking up all the time? We got 4 people watching. Well, we had 4 people watching. Not 2 of them left because of my damned audio. I'm just trying to keep moving and we'll see what happens.
Fuck it.
And if it fails, it fails. And we got to circle back. We'll circle back. So my first guest today is going to be Solo Acosta. Solo Acosta is a mixed martial arts instructor specializing in boxing-based modalities of training. He is a coach. He's currently the head striking coach at Pura Vida Mixed Martial Arts in BJJ in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His notable students include Montel Jackson, UFC Bantamweight, Zak Ottow, UFC veteran, Jamey Simmons, UFC Bantamweight, and Jonas Flok PFL Lightweight. I would like to welcome Solo. Solo, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. This is my first public conversation like this. Peter John Henderson's going to be very disappointed at me that he didn't get the first one.
I got you, Petey. I'll bring you on here too. I know you know stuff. So, Solo, tell me about your introduction to combat. Like, in your life, how was combat introduced to you? Does that question make sense?
Oh man, yeah, it depends on. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, but I don't know how you want me to answer that. Like, do you want me to tell you about like how I grew up and that stuff, or like start from beginning of like my first day in a boxing gym?
Say all of the above. Yo, you're a superhero. I want your origin story. So you tell me your origin story.
So I got introduced to combat at a very early age. As early as I can remember, my uncles were heavily involved in my youth due to my father's business, and so my uncle Willie and my uncle Bobby would always, come to the house, and while they were handling their business, they'd beat me up, rough me up a little bit, get me used to getting hit and showing me how to hold my hands and basically how to fight. And then as time went on, you see I got to watch them do it like religiously on a weekend basis, and then you just it becomes normal.
You were around for them fighting a lot?
Say that again?
You were around for your uncles fighting a lot with like random people or what?
Oh yeah, but these are like drug deals gone bad, or someone disrespecting my mom or my sisters, or you know they my family had the neighborhood on lock. A lot of aggressive action growing up.
So so that was normal for you. When did you start boxing then? Boxing was your first like formal training, correct?
Yep. Taekwondo was. I did taekwondo before that, but it was a very brief stint. Um, I was probably there 4 months, and then after that, I went to um, Ace Boxing with my guy Damien, rest in peace. His grandfather was Del Porter, and that was my first time in an actual in a boxing gym. We were young, super young. Um, and then from there, uh, my grandfather worked at UCC for a long period of time. So, uh, I would go to UCC and
UCC is one of the clubs on the south side of Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, the United Community Center.
It's been around forever, hasn't it?
Oh, for sure, yeah, 50, 60 years, if not longer. My grandpa was there probably 40 years, I think, before he passed. He was there until he died.
Like a teacher?
No, I don't know exactly what. I think he did security. He was kind of like grandfathered in to do whatever he wanted, basically.
Just
At
nobody's
UCC. That's how long he was there. But he would, we would go up in the gym and you know, in the boxing gym and hit the bags. And I did a lot of watching those guys who laid the pavement. I didn't I didn't take boxing serious until I was in my early teens, where I thought I was going to become a world champion, but um, I was torn between two different worlds of, trying to live the street life and be involved in that life, and trying to go the route of becoming a world champion. The street
Was your
life one.
grandfather a boxer?
No, my
Was he-
grandfather was huge into baseball. The fighting. I think the love of fighting came from just the amount of violence and the amount of fights growing up in my early, 5, 6, 7 years old. At those ages, watching all the action go down in front of my house and in my neighborhood.
It seemed like fun or what?
Yeah, it came. When you go with your hands, people respected you. You know, so it was just something that organically came to me.
That makes sense. What made you? You say you were torn between the life in the streets and the life in the gym. What made
Say
you
that again.
decide one or? You said you were torn between the life in the streets and the life in the gym. What made you choose one versus the other?
The amount of fun uh, I was missing when I was in the gym that was being described to me. You know, my nigga
Mm,
KG, rest in peace, would tell me what they got into. Manny, Frank, Ricky, all kind of good stories while I'm in the gym punching bags and trying to perfect this craft. These guys are out here having fun, doing all kinds of
at
stuff.
this at this time, did you already know like the other people that? Did you already know like Chico?
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. I've known Chico
Was
since he
Chico
was probably
already
3 years
fighting?
old.
Oh yeah.
Say that again.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I said was he already
Chico's family and our family, they go back, from their day ones
fighting?
for
Okay.
sure. My mom and Chico's mom, uh, my father and Chico's mom, all all did business together.
I got you. I got you. I got you. So what made you? hmm, So you're so as like a young teenager, even maybe before that, right? Like all your friends are on the street telling you all the stuff that you're missing while you're in the gym. So then through stories that you've told me, I know that you kind of transitioned out of the gym and transitioned into more of a street life. Um, what what was that like, and what
I didn't hear the
brought you?
question.
What was so as an early teenager, you transitioned out of boxing a lot and more into being on the
Hmm.
streets. What was
Yep.
that like, and what brought you back?
It You broke up again, but if I heard you right, what was the mindset like, or what was
What?
the
Yeah, I mean, what was that experience of leaving combat sports to go hang out on the streets with your friends? And
well, you'd think it's gonna be there forever.
mm,
You think I don't think anyone, at least for me, it wasn't like my thought was, I'm gonna go hang out on the block and I'll be back. That was my thought. I'll go to the block today and hang out, and then I'll go to the gym tomorrow, and then every day you wake up, you go on the block and say, I'll go to the gym tomorrow. I'll go on the block, go to the gym tomorrow, and it's just that process. And over time, before you realize it, you ain't been in the gym in months, and you've been on the block
mm,
doing nothing but finding that trouble that you ain't really looking for, but uh, you know I guess maybe you were looking for it, and I don't know. But yeah, it's subtle. It's very subtle. You won't notice it if you ain't paying attention.
I've seen a lot of people retire that way, right? And not like necessarily for the streets, but life happens. One thing happens, another thing happens, and people fall off. People that have been training forever fall off, and you're like, what happened to that dude? What brought you back to combat sports?
I think I was probably 17, 18, maybe a little older. I know I was at Duke's. I was just doing kickboxing at Duke's because I was bored. You know,
How'd you find
I had.
Dukes?
How did I what?
How did you find Dukes?
How did
Duke Rufus for the listeners.
Well, my uncles know Duke and his brother Jeff. That is his brother Rick. Excuse me. So they always talked about you know Duke and Rick, and mainly Rick. They were like, I think they were closer to Rick, and he was the only place in Milwaukee that had like credible kickboxing, Muay Thai to be exact.
Mm.
And when I was about 12 years old, maybe 10 years old, could be earlier. It's that time period's real foggy in my head. But this guy owed my dad some money, and this was before he went up. He got locked up. He owed my dad some money, and or maybe he was locked up already. I don't really remember what the order was, but I remember my mom sending me to this guy because I was getting in trouble in school a lot. You know, being pretty aggressive. You know, with other classmates, and he was teaching me. Well, it was me and like five other kids. It was in his house. It was really weird. We're running like 11th and Madison in that area, 12th and Madison on the south side. But in his basement, he had like Thai bags. Now that I recognize them, long bags and treadmills and Thai pads. And he was supposed to be teaching us, what I thought to be karate because I always wanted to be a ninja, right? Um, yeah. So, but instead of teaching us anything, he had us watch these fights, and I sit there and I watch these on VHS tapes. I'm watching these fights, and I'm like, what is this? The fights we were watching. Now I recognize they were Muay Thai fights. So
Mm.
yeah, it was very fascinating. I didn't understand what was going on then because obviously just coming from it was either a ninja type fighting or boxing. I
Yeah.
really seen Muay Thai. So that lasted like for like a month, maybe a month and a half, and then life took me in different directions. Um, but I might have been 18 years old, and I was transitioning out from the group of friends that I would normally be accustomed to hanging out with on a daily basis. And I went by Chico's house one day, and because me and his Chico's older brother Jesse, we go way. I mean, we go back from day one. So I was over there, and he came in. I was trained at Duke's. Um, to answer your question, I'm sorry about that. I knew of Duke from his pedigree from my family. So I enrolled at in his school, and I was there maybe I don't know, maybe 4 months, 5 months. Um, and UFC was was it was still it was before '05, so maybe I've been older than 18. UFC wasn't like mainstream. That was I don't think like Red or I don't think he had a jiu-jitsu program at this point. It was just a small
Mm-mm.
kickboxing class.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, I go by Chico's house, and I see he comes in the house and he's all sweating, right? He's like hot. And I'm like, you good, man? I just recognized that body language, and he was like, man, blah 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 blah. And I looked at him, And I said, bro, you should come train with me over at Duke's, and we can get paid to fight. And at that time, he just like brushed me off. He was in a different mindset at that
Yeah.
time.
Hold on, I want to pause you for 1 second, just for the
Yeah.
record. The person he's talking about is Chico Camus, who at one point was ranked in the top 10 in the world. So this dude that he's known his entire life says, "Nah, I'm not gonna go be a fighter." Now Chico Camus is one of the best fighters ever, and is a
Oh,
really, really
Chico.
good foreman for Rose Namajunas. Like, that's a big name to be blowing you off. Keep going.
Chico, man, yeah, that was Chico has he was I wish he would have recognized it then, but you live and learn. But but he grew up seeing the same shit I did, just more of it. um so maybe a year later, or there's a period of time that goes by, you know, I I'm at Potawatomi, I'm working there, and I'm paying my membership at Duke's, but not really going because this real life job has consumed a lot of my time. And Chico calls me up and he's like Solo. He goes, my boy Anthony's putting together a fight team. I should come train with us. And I was like, let me know when. He was like, this Wednesday. So I was like, cool. I said, you need a ride, and he's like, yeah, come scoop me. So I go scoop him. We go to this gym on Highway 100, and it's called Taekwondo USA on the outside, but on the inside, it was Evolution Martial Arts. And I walk in, I see Tone, and I'm like, hey, you train at Duke's. Um, and he recognized me from in passing. I took the kickboxing class, and he did a different class, but we end up. I waited for that, him to get done doing his thing over there, and we end up sparring. He was like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, Chico invited me, told me you're putting together a fight team, like I'm down to get down. And he's like, cool. He's like, you want to spar? And I'm like, let's go. And we sparred for like 20 minutes, mainly just boxing. But I remember like when he'd hit me, I'm like, this motherfucker, bro, he hits hard. It took me back, and I had to like dig into mega tricks, just to make it somewhat competitive. But I recognized right away Tone was gonna be like something special because he
This is before he was Showtime.
yeah, and didn't even have he had no Showtime tattoo on his back. This was before then. He might have still been an amateur at this point, maybe 2 fights in his amateur career.
Probably not even MMA
Uh,
yet,
no,
because
I
I
think it
was there
was.
for like his first MMA fight. He was some kickboxing stud before that. That's what everybody was talking about in the crowd.
Oh, I don't remember.
In, um, in his first MMA fight, I'm pretty sure it was his first fight. He knocked this guy down like 11 times. And every time he did, he
Probably
would
yeah,
take 2 or 3 steps back and almost run
and
to
then
the opposite side of the cage. And as
yeah,
a
go right back
grappler,
at
I
him, right?
was so confused. But he won that fight and he made it look easy. Like he beat that guy bad.
Yeah, it
Anyways,
was
and
like 40
at
something
this time, I had
seconds.
no idea who Anthony Pettis is. He's just some dude that I'm watching in his first MMA fight or third MMA fight or whatever. So you're having the same experience. You're running into this dude way before he's anybody that anybody knows.
Yeah, there was no he there was no bright lights or cameras. It was just hard work and grind. So we rocked out. He offered me a coaching job, helping his brother Serge and Chico and Ray and Kyle and Moneybags, and just a room full of little killers. It would have been nice to see how that would have turned out if we all could have stuck together. But
Were you there when Rose was there?
I was at Duke's when Rose was at Duke's.
I meant Evolution.
Yeah.
Chico said that she comes from that Rose came up from Evolution before she was at Duke's.
No, no, I didn't meet Rose until
Okay.
I didn't meet Rose until we merged with Rufus Sport.
Oh, there was a merger. Okay.
Say it again.
There was a merger. I didn't know there was a merger.
Yeah. So what ended up happening? What ended up happening there was, uh, you know, Tone set it up, had it set up to where on Saturdays, all his guys could go over there and spar, and the star of the guy with the most potential was Chico, so it was only logical for, and this is coming from conversation I had with Tone. It was, Tone was like in the in the in the prime of his making a name for himself. So going from his training at Duke's to come over to Highway 100, he wasn't able to give that group of guys, the undivided attention that he was getting, while at Rufus Sports. So it just made sense to bring the two teams together. So, and that's what happened. I didn't want to merge. In my mind, I was like, we could do it on our own. I remember when Chico came up to me. I think it was the first grappling tournament Combat Corner put on, and he told me that he was that they were over there full time, and I was convinced, like, bro, we can, we can do this, like we can. I was in my head, I like just how it is today. Like
Mm-hmm.
I thought,
You all.
you know, oh, I always believed in myself,
Mm-hmm.
and don't get me wrong, like, there was, if it, it would have been today, hindsight being 2020, it was 100% the right decision to make, 100%, because there was things in the process and the journey that I had no clue of, and Duke is, he's an encyclopedia of knowledge, encyclopedia of information, you know, some good, some bad, but you're gonna learn,
Were
you're gonna
you were
learn.
you guys doing MMA at that point, or were you still doing kickboxing?
I think so. I think it was already he had merged into that, adopted the MMA philosophy,
So
traditional
were you guys
kickboxing.
grappling at Evolution?
Were we grappling at Evolution?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were. We were.
Okay.
We
Cool. Very cool. So MMA was like there was never like a hey, there's this MMA thing. It was just like, yeah, we're fighting, and then fighting goes many places,
yeah.
right? Like it was.
It wasn't. It wasn't like it wasn't no MMA thing. It was. It was really recognized as fighting. Like, we're gonna go fight. Oh, we're gonna fight on the ground. Oh, what is this? Why am I feeling like I'm gonna go to sleep? Oh, he's choking you. Oh, with what? So, those lapel chokes, man, they come in sneaky. Those blood chokes ain't no joke.
You guys are fighting in geese.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. You
That's
know,
awesome.
it is. It was honestly, it was one of the, like, I think about those days all the time, because the people that I had got a chance to be around, the Scott Houstons, the Tom, was it Tom Mullers? I can't pronounce
Mueller.
his last name.
Tom Mueller. Judo
Mueller,
Tom
there you
Mueller.
go. Yeah. Uh, who was another one? Brent, Red, Aaron
Oh, right.
Bridges,
Mm-hmm.
the Beard, like just the who's who of grapplers.
The beard.
Yeah.
That's the name that
I don't even know
nobody's
his
gonna
name.
know. I don't know his real
Yeah.
name either. I think it's
Yeah,
Dan.
he was right. It's
I
like,
think
I
it's.
think it's Dave something, right?
I
Is it
think
Dave?
no. You're
Then
thinking
there's
about
that other
Polish Dave.
Dave.
That's
Yeah, there's
Polish
Polish
Dave
Dave,
Kowalkowski or
Chris
whatever.
Piper. Like,
Piper.
just these guys were, they they were, you know, they're the foundation of jiu-jitsu in Milwaukee, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. All of those guys deserve a noteworthy mention in the development of grappling in that area.
For sure, for sure.
They, at their own times, they were pillars of the community.
Yep.
Some of them still are. Scott Houston, Red Schaefer are still very, very powerful figures in the community. I believe Aaron Bridges is coaching somewhere as well, and Brent has his own gym. Like a lot of those names are still around and still doing very good things.
Yeah, for sure. And good for them. I'm happy for them.
Yeah. It's nice to see the people you came up with that are still around.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like in the last couple of years, people that I knew when I was a kid are getting black belts.
For sure.
Like, oh, damn. Like, there's more than just like two of us that actually got all the way here.
Yeah, I think back then it was that if you seen a purple belt, you were like, oh my god, like this dude's a god, because they just didn't exist. There were no black belts. I think it was just Henry. Henry was, the only black belt for a long time.
Henry got his black belt in 2006, and then John got his in like 2008, and then I think Red and Dr. Tim got theirs in 2009.
Yeah, I remember when Red got his black belt.
When I met Henry, he was a brown belt. Like,
Jesus.
He was super weird. Yeah, I only met him once when he was a brown belt. But like, my first jiu-jitsu tournament, Henry Matamoros was running the tournament. This is before Combat Corner was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't even hear about jiu-jitsu at this time. So actually, let me take this back. The first, so you remember that UFC game Tap Out?
Yeah.
So me and my brother used to play that all the time, right? And we'd watch the game and then try the move. Watch the game and try to move. So I was like, man, I did everything I could to learn about jiu-jitsu. So I started following like the Gracies. I wasn't Google at the time. I with AOL, that dial-up stuff, but I find an article here, article there. My nephew, my second nephew, Hoyler, is named after Hoyler Gracie. That's how much me and my brothers were like avid consumers of whatever they did. I look in the yellow pages and I found a Gracie gym and I called them up and I was like, hey, are you guys coming to Milwaukee at all? And they're like, no, that's not how this works. I didn't know, but I end up walking in, like, I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu. So I go to, Henry has his gym in Bayview and I walk in there and, it's me and this dude named 5-0. For the record, he wasn't a cop, far from it, but, that's what we called him because he looked like one. He looked like he could be a cop, but he wasn't a cop. He was whatever. But so we walk in there, and I remember it was Red, it was Omar, Aaron, like the who's who of BJJ in Milwaukee. And I remember looking at Henry, and I'm like waiting for him to come talk to me, because I know I'm ready to sign up. And for like 15, 20 minutes, I got nothing. I just sat there, like, and then I told 5-0, I was like, let's roll, bro. And we left. Can you imagine how that would have turned out if we would have stayed?
You have a completely different. Yep. It's not even a different life, but it would be a different, like.
We'd be having a different conversation.
Yeah, we would. We'd have a very different conversation. That would make a lot of big changes if you had stuck with them that early.
Yeah. So, anyways, going back to how I got back involved in combat sports, it was through Chico. Chico had he started to grow out of that mindset of, like, being on the streets. And when I met Tone, it was just that perfect chemistry. And, the rest is history.
But that's what we're here for, man. We're here for that history.
Oh, so we got to talk about it.
We don't have to talk about anything, but but that is what we're here for. Like, it's to hear your story, to see what's up. Like, you were at Duke's. I know you were at Duke's for a while, and then I met you at Reds. Like,
Yeah.
we're almost caught up to where I met you, but I don't really even know the details of your story there.
At Reds. Oh, so what ended up happening is at Duke. So at this time, like uh Pat was over. He was at Duke's,
Pat
but there
Barry?
was Pat Barry. There was no real like path. You know, there was no real path to like get into the mecca of MMA.
Mhm,
Like at least I couldn't see it.
mhm.
In boxing, you you go there. You become a punching bag for somebody, um, and then if you're strong enough, uh, you'll get some recognition from a coach. And when I say strong enough, I mean like disciplined. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, it's all there because it's not fun. And I think that was the problem I had was, in my mind, I was on a skill wise or potential wise, because I won't use the word skill, but on a potential wise, I was like Sugar Ray Robinson. I believe without question, um, that I could have been a world champion. But what I know now is my coach has seen something in me that only time would allow a person to see, and that's experience dealing with people. I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't disciplined enough to be able to go into the gym day in day out and do the same routine day in day out, not knowing when I'm gonna get that you know get that chance to hit the pads, or have that conversation with the coach. I wasn't disciplined enough for that, and they seen it. I didn't know it, but they seen like that kid could be good, and you know what I'm talking about now. You got experience in the gyms. That kid could be good, but he's got no discipline, and they let you weed yourself out. And I salute them for that, because you know it separates the Mayweathers from you know the really good boxers who don't go anywhere with it. It's just that process.
That's
So
how wrestling was. They were trying the first 2 weeks of wrestling. They were just trying to make you quit wrestling. They weren't even teaching you yet. They just wanted to see if they could break you. And if
yeah,
they
so
didn't break you and you kept coming, they're going to teach you something. Do you still struggle with discipline?
yes, I do. I do. Um, in other areas, uh, I think one of the areas would come. One of my big struggles with discipline is the consistency of like with my diet. You know, um, and that self sabotage is a real thing. You know, I think overall, because I had dealt with so much loss in my life, starting at such a young age, that my fear, and growing up in an environment where if you felt scared, you were a pussy, like you weren't shit. Not knowing how to manage those emotions before fights, before boxing exhibitions or um, upcoming tournaments, um, because you feel these feelings, but you weren't supposed to feel them because those feelings are associated with cowards. You know, it 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 can twist your psyche up a little bit. It can fuck your
Mm.
psyche up a lot, to be honest. So for as much as I am grateful for the upbringing, some of those experiences early in my childhood, dealing with the type of aggressive family that I grew up in, um, it affected me, because and you have to look at it this way. Growing up for me, I was very privileged. I didn't grow up poor. My father, uh, he was making a lot of money, a lot. You know, So I grew up with the world handed to me. It wasn't until he went to prison that, you know, all the struggles really came. You know, becoming homeless. You know, my family, my brothers and sisters being separated. Um, going to McDonald's and, you know, waiting for the manager to see if she can give us like cheeseburgers or whatever they were gonna throw away. You know, that's when he went away, all that became reality. You know, so the experiences that um the experiences that or the lessons I should say that I watched growing up, I had now had to become that. You know, but on the inside,
Uh,
I didn't, you know, I never wanted to be my uncles. You know, I just
mhm.
watched them do it. I never wanted to, you know, be uh, violent or, you know, hurt people. It was what you seen, and when I got exposed to that world, you had to become that. And if you didn't, you were gonna get ate up.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Hmm.
So, um, when it came to like combat sports, uh, and you had these feelings, you know, it was like I vividly remember there there was a couple incidents, and this is gonna be more towards the MMA aspect of things where um Tone got mad at me in the gym, and he let me have it. And he told me he said to me, um he said I couldn't finish a workout, and he said to me, Solo, you have $1 million hands. He goes, but you're never gonna use them if you don't get your diet under control. You're never gonna be able to, you know, reap the fruits of your talent if you don't take your weight serious. And again, at this point, I'm like, who the hell is this kid? You know, because he's, I don't know, 6, 7 years younger than me, telling me this. But it hurt me so bad because it was the same things my coaches, you know, would tell me when I was boxing. You know, so it all came back, and I had to think like, damn, why do I keep doing this to myself? And I didn't figure it out yet. I didn't figure out what the issue was. I had
Do
an
you
idea. Say that again.
do you know now what the
Oh,
issue?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it took. So how I discovered this was Donald Cerrone was given an interview. Um, I think he was still in WEC, and he was talking to somebody, and he was like, in this interview, he was like, "Yeah, I'm scared before every fight," and he described the emotions and feelings that I had, you know,
Uh,
before I would go fight, you know. And it's different because, like, if you fight in the streets, like,
there's no buildup.
there's no build up. Correct.
There's no
It,
6 weeks of thinking
it
about it.
it
There's
just
no
happens.
7 hours before it happens. There's yeah.
Correct.
There's no countdown.
You
You're
just
never
have
on
to
deck.
correct. You just react, you
Hmm.
know, and that's the easy part. That's the easy part because you can be on the block. Some niggas roll through. They either air you out or they jump out, and you pick one and you go toe to toe with that person, you know, or you know they two might come at you. Whatever the situation is, you don't have time to process. You just react. But then when you know you're going to fight, you know, you're like these characters get built in your head, you know, and you know you're getting your ass whooped, and you just can't beat this guy no matter how good of a day you had in the gym. You just can't beat this dude. And then maybe one day you have a dream where you're like, or you just visualize, yeah, I smashed this guy. And but I always because I was always told when I was a child, you know, that if you're scared, you're a pussy. If you're scared, you know, you, if you have these feelings, you know, basically you're a bitch. I struggled with that because I did have these feelings. I did have, you know, the anxieties, but I suppressed them and I would sabotage myself because, well, I don't have to go fight. I don't have to compete in this tournament. I don't have to do this. You found your way out, you
Yep.
know? So, Tone called me out on that. And, you know, he wasn't lying about it. I still had the residual effects of that. So, Donald Cerrone does this interview and he describes all those feelings. He describes them all. And I'm like, holy shit, it's okay to be scared. Like, it's okay. Like, this person, you know, fights like every 2 weeks and he's feeling this and he still does it. And I asked Tone, I called Tone up and I'm like, bro, I said, do you ever get scared before you fight? And he's like, yeah, man, I get butterflies all the time. And it blew my mind. Like, I didn't believe him. I called Pat up and I'm like, Pat, do you ever get do you ever get scared before you fight?
Just on the list to call every person you know.
I call him up,
They
yeah,
gotta
bro.
be lying to me.
And I'm like, do you get? And he's like, bro, I'm a wreck. He's like, I'm crying and like I gotta go take a shit like every 10 minutes. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? So the next day I talked to Chico, like a couple of days later, I'm like, Chico, like, uh, I don't even think Chico fought yet. So I was like, bro, do you ever get like nervous or the butterflies coming from a recovery? He's like, hell no, nigga. So so it wasn't until I actually seen Chico like compete for the first time and watch him cry and watch him express his emotions. I'm like, nigga, you were lying to me this whole time. You get it. So for me, I wish I would have had that conversation. I wish somebody would have recognized, back when in my early teens and said, "Hey, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have these feelings of fear." You know, because once you learn how to manage them, it's like fire. Once you know how to control fire, it becomes dangerous. Or water. Once you learn how to control water, it becomes dangerous. So I think the gift of me giving back is the fact that I know what that internal that internal demon looks like and sounds like and smells like and tastes like, because he lived in my head for you know 30 plus years. So I can never tell anybody what it feels like to win a belt, you know, but I can tell someone what they're gonna feel like if they don't give themselves a chance to honestly compete. Because my experience, just on the other side of self sabotage, is victory, right?
Mm.
So if you just don't do what I did, you're gonna be victorious, because I did everything in life just to survive, you know, just to
Hmm.
survive.
You can't think about more important. You can't think about. You don't have time for other shit when you're focused on survival.
Correct. Yeah, because you remember I had to go back to the block. I had
Yep.
to go back to the neighborhood. You
Yep.
know, I had to make sure that those who were around me, like looked at me with a level of respect, and count my blessings. My older brothers and my family name, that it carried some weight. So
If you don't want to throw anybody under the bus, you can totally skip this question. Who is the fighter that you have run into that is the most afraid before a fight?
like to deal with emotion, like visible.
I don't know, man. You coached more fighters than I have.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
you can't see it.
no, I it's definitely Chico.
Chico?
Chico, yeah, Chico is he he's very it's crazy to watch. It's almost beautiful to see, because he goes from the supreme level of confidence to like empty, You know, there's like you can look in his eyes, and he's like completely at the mercy of 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 fear. And then when you tell him it's like, hey, you know, you're walking in 5, that light turns on and it's go. He just does what he does best. But Chico's he gets very emotional
Interesting.
before his fights.
Have you ever run into a fighter who's
You
not right?
you were you were you were emotional, but in a different way. You know, you hid your emotions with over aggressive antics and and you know, very vocal and animated. You know,
Hmm. It wasn't until my Jordan Newman fight that I felt anything before a fight. And I'm very disconnected from my emotions. So then when
yeah.
you did,
See, and that's why I argue with that, because just like in my experience, the feeling, the disconnect of self sabotage and and uh, not really acknowledging the lack of discipline. Um, it was there. I just didn't connect it. So when every, you know, we've had this conversation in the past. When you tell me, "Oh, I don't feel this" or "I don't feel that," you felt it. You just put it in a category of unidentified emotional
got,
objects. You know
got
what I
you.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Something
all
to figure
it's
out
all
later.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
never
all
really
there.
noticed. It wasn't like everybody around me say like, "Oh yeah, I'm afraid before a fight," and I always thought like, "Why am I not afraid? Shouldn't I be? Everyone else is."
Well, check this out.
And now it's totally different.
Yeah, because even for my fights, like I you know, I'd have the butterflies and nerves before that, but day of, I couldn't see past it. I couldn't see past that day, right? But that's because the end result we put no value in. We honestly didn't care if we won or lost because there was no value in it. That was our way of cheating ourselves, you know?
Explain.
Okay, so when Tone was running through his amateur scene and making his way up the pro circuit, I, for the love of God, would tell him like, bro, you gotta stop finishing these dudes in under a minute. You know, you gotta stop. You know, you gotta get that. You gotta feel. You gotta know what it feels like to go to the third round, because he was you know, first round in and out, right? He put so much, like, the win, that victory. That's the only thing that mattered to him, was getting that win.
Okay.
And the faster he can get it, the you know,
Better.
the better. Wusa, right?
Yep.
Me, speaking for me, I didn't put any value on wins. I just wanted to be able to survive. I didn't want to die. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So whether if I won or I lost, I didn't care as long as I didn't die. That's that poison mindset though, you know, where he, it mattered to him. That win, it mattered to him. Where it didn't matter to me as long as I no, as long as I didn't die. It's just like surviving on the street, right? As long as you don't die, you're good. You could eat.
That's one of the most fascinating things you've ever told me. I'm gonna chew on that for months.
No.
That was very deep. So what? So the last thing we talked about that was in your timeline, right? Was you are at Duke's. They combined evolution with Duke's, so it's one place. You guys don't have to bounce back and forth all the time. Pat Barry's around now. Who else is around? Who else? What other big important
It
names
was
are
Red, Scott Houston, Omar, Aaron Bridges, Kyle Weicker, Danny Boy Downs, Dan Savage. It was, you know, the guys who the first pillars of MMA in Milwaukee. That first wave. But even there, you know, so my time at Duke's, I appreciate it. I love, I loved the people that I got to train with and got to experience, but I wasn't able to like fully invest in it because for the first time in my life I had like this real job, you know.
Oh,
And the casino was expanding, so there was this is where I'm gonna go back to. There was no like clear path. Like I didn't think fucking Tone was gonna fucking make it to the UFC. I never thought he was gonna leave Wisconsin, you know.
yep, yep.
And because it was my options were, you know, take this what was supposed to be a summer job, um, turned into 10 plus year career making good money. I was making the equivalent, not the equivalent, but I was making good money legally. You know, I didn't have to like. It was the first time I've ever made money where I didn't have to worry about the cops kicking in my door or
You're not
getting
looking over
pulled
your shoulder.
over. Yeah, I'm looking over like it's so
Yep.
it was like it was the only secure thing I had in my life, was that job. And for the first time that like I grew up, like I became a man
That was
there.
when you had kids, right?
I didn't have any kids yet. I started
Okay.
at Potawatomi when I was 18.
Okay.
So at this point I'm probably like 20. Diego was just born. Boom was like right around the corner. So yeah. And matter of fact, yeah, I did have them. I forgot about them. Um,
Those damn
I
kids.
yeah, right. I did have them, and that was a scary part, um, because I'm able to provide for my family and give them a life that I never had. The stability that I never had. I was able to give that to them. So it was you know quit Potawatomi and train, or like bro, you're making very good money. You don't need for nothing. Like you know you're able to do all this. When evolution, when Tone first, I hooked up with Tone. like i I bought all the chai bags. I bought like 4 bags. I bought like this pull-up machine. Like I equipped the gym out with the stuff we needed to be competitive and striking. He told me, hey, buy this, buy that, and boom, 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 boom. I bought it. It was nothing. So to go from that to like I was afraid to leave that security and commit to fighting, you know? So
When did you abandon that security net? What
oh
made
check
you
this.
abandon that
Well,
security net?
talking to Tone again. So I'm at the casino and I'm like watching Tone, Chico, Pat, Ray, like they're all in Vegas, and I'm like, holy fuck, Tone and Chico are signed to the UFC. Serge is making like he's chopping at the footsteps.
17 and he's chopping at their footsteps or some
Yeah,
shit. Like,
Sergio is Sergio is I love that kid. I I I, I remember he was probably 13. I had top mount and he punched me in the nose from his back. Boom. And I thought he broke my nose because my shit just said, and I get up, and again I'm like 240 on top of this 13-year-old, and he hit me so hard, and I remember being like, bro, you're the next Vitor Belfort. You're you're the fucking phenom, and that's how he got that name.
oh yeah,
Yeah, Sergio the Phenom Pettis. Yep.
beautiful,
Yeah, because
beautiful. I love it.
he smashed me right off his back. I remember looking at his eyes too long because I'm like laughing at him. He couldn't get up, and he just wow. And I was like, oh, this motherfucker, I love you. So I forget where was I at? Remind me, refresh me where I
What
was
made
at.
you abandon the safety
Oh,
net?
okay. So yeah, so it's I don't know, it's like 2010 or something like that. And Tone hits me up. He's like, "Hey, bro." He's like, I'm about to have my baby come to the hospital. And I'm like, what hospital? You know, tells me what hospital. And we go there and, we go up to the room and there's like 20 niggas out there, So, we all take our turns going in and we look at his daughter and we're like, damn, bro, I can't believe you're a dad. And, I'm welcoming him to fatherhood and this, because I already got two of them at this point. And we go downstairs in the cafeteria to, get some food. And we're talking and he's like, bro, when are you gonna leave the casino and just like commit to fighting, And then he goes, you don't even have to fight, just coach, I know you like coaching more than fighting, so just coach, And I'm like, damn, I love to, I was like, I was coaching for Duke, and then I left that position, so I didn't know if he was saying, come back to Duke. I didn't know if Duke would take me back as a coach, So I'm like, I don't know if this, going back to Duke's is an option. And he was like, nah, bro. He was like, you come coach, come work for me, come help me build my fight teams. And I'm like, I told him, I was like, give me 3 months. Give me 3 months. And he's like, whenever you're ready, you'll have a job on Monday. So I'm like, love, blah blah blah. And then we go about our day. I'm going to the casino, and every day I just keep playing that conversation in my head. And I'm like, man, I got enough money to where I can at least take 2 years of not having to work, and I was just like, fuck it, like I'm checked out. I'm checked out. I'm checked out of Potawatomi. So I didn't want to quit, because if you quit, you can't collect unemployment. So so seeing I used to be part of my responsibilities was terminating people, I kind of had a nice little strategy. So I just, made some small mistakes, a lot of them, stuff that I normally didn't make. And, when you fuck up so many times,
you put them in a position where they have to.
Yeah, you put people in a position to where you have to, So I end up officially being terminated from the casino. And I went through the process to get my job back. I knew they weren't going to give it to me, but I had to do everything just to make sure everything was in order.
Yeah.
And then, I caught that unemployment, nice little paychecks for about a year and some change. And after that, I was like, all right, well, I got this chunk of money. And yeah, that was a big mistake because I was spending, when you spend money and you don't replenish it, it just goes away. And I wasn't accustomed to living that way.
Yep.
So I spent very fast, and real life, real money management skills had to kick in. But I left, Potawatomi, and then I went working for Tone again at his. He ended up buying Rufus Sport out of this contract that they had. It was a South campus called Rufus Sport South, and it was out in Oak Creek in the suburbs of Milwaukee County. And we're doing our thing there. But he had a business partner who wanted to go more in the traditional direction of Taekwondo, traditional martial arts, and that just wasn't me. I couldn't. I had a hard time trying to, sell this parent on me teaching their child how to do a triple somersault butterfly kick or whatever, no, it wasn't me. So, Razak Al Hassan, I don't know if you remember who he is.
I competed against him in my very first cage match ever at 17 years old.
Yeah, that's a big boy.
10 minutes before the match, they tell me he's a UFC fighter.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then
he
3 minutes
was
later, like, don't worry. He doesn't know how to grapple. He's got no idea how to grapple. It's fine that he's a grown ass man with the biggest muscles you've ever seen in your life at this point. Yo, he tech falled me. He
bro.
fucked me up.
I Duke Cat is doing these wall takedown drills, and he was my partner, and I just remember being like, "You're not a fucking heavyweight, Solo. You're just fat." Because
Yeah.
he's a
Yeah.
fucking heavyweight.
That's a real heavyweight.
He's
Yep.
a real heavyweight. You're just fat, and and yeah, it was. I'm not a wrestler by any stretch of the imagination, but it was very very interesting. God bless Razak Side for not pounding me into the pavement that day. But so he was by me. We were working striking. I was holding pads for him, and there was a couple fights he had that I went and worked with him on post his UFC days, and he tells me, I'm telling him like like this situation I'm in, with Tone's gym, and he's like, you ever think about going to Reds? He opened up a school, and I'm like, no, I never thought of that, because when I was at Duke's, me and Red weren't tight, um he stayed in his world, and I stayed in mine, but it was mutual respect. So I go there, and Razak's like, "Hey, you remember Solo?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Blah blah. Talking, and he's like, I said, "Red, are you, by any chance you're looking for a striking coach?" And he's like, "Yeah, we are." And I was like, "Hey, I'm available." And he was like, "Let me talk to Scotty, because Scotty Seabright was their striking coach, but Scotty was he did the oil rig stuff, worked overseas, so he'd be gone like 6 to 8 weeks, every 6 to 8 weeks, and then back for like 2 months. So there was no real consistency because of his job took him away from the gym. So I came in and filled that role, that consistent striking coach. So I let Tone know, like, hey bro, like, I appreciate everything you've done for me, because he's done a lot. He's done a lot for me. I love you, but I gotta make this move. And he's like, I totally understand. He was real supportive, and I ended up going to Reds.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you want to talk about your time at Reds at all?
Yeah, yeah. That's uh. So when I get there, like, what do you want to know first? Like,
I don't know, man. It's your
let's go
story.
into it. All right.
Yeah, that's your story.
So I get there, and I always wanted to have a fight team. Like, I always knew that's the direction I want to go. So that was my priority. That was my main goal, was to do that. And he had a little fight team there.
Who were the
There
first
was
fighters you were working with at Reds?
Austin Luchin, I think is how you say his
Austin
last name.
Lucian? I think it's
Austin
Lucian.
Luchin. I think so. He won't be mad at me if I botch it, but
Yeah.
it's all love.
What up, Austin?
Yeah, right. Um, it was him, and then Doug D-Back, who
Mm-hmm.
came with me from Duke's, from Tone's gym.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a guy named Hippie Mike,
Mm-hmm.
Hippie, and that was really it. It wasn't a big team. And
Did
then
you corner Hippie Mike against me in a pancration fight?
I could have.
I mean, first
I
time I
don't.
ever met him, I fought him in pancration, right? When I was like 21, like 2 years, maybe a year and a half before I got to Reds, maybe even a year before I got to Reds. I fought Hippie in a pancration fight.
I it's bro. I don't
No
remember.
worries. No worries. Just
Yeah,
curious.
I don't
It
remember.
didn't even occur to me that that was a possibility.
um, but yeah, it was real small. It was real small. And then we got another guy. So I'm like doing my striking classes, and trying to get this thing built. And then we get a guy named Julio. I think his last name is Hernandez. To call him Jay. Then Rodney came, and then and there's a small list, small list, but like we. Oh, and then Montel comes. Oh, Devon, how do I forget about him?
Tim Hiley.
Tim Hiley. Like
Mhm.
we start to get some energy.
Mhm.
And there was a point at 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 Reds where uh we weren't getting any fights, right? So I dug deep back in, going back to Rufus Sport, the main campus. Um but I just held my guns and oh, Chico ended up coming by us. I'll tell you that story in a second. Um I was just like, this is where I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna build my name. I'm gonna build my name right here. This is it. So I just plugged away, I was constantly evaluating guys, moving them in areas of moving them towards the skill set that they need to do to get better, and we end up in my opinion, I felt like at the height of my time at Reds, we were in second place, and Duke was always number one. Just the pedigree of guys he had at the time was undeniable. But we were definitely in second place, and I challenged anybody to prove me wrong.
Mhm.
That's how strong I felt we were rolling.
As soon as you recognized that someone was catching up to you, is when you moved over, right?
No, no, not even close to that.
No,
Not
interesting.
even no, no. You don't remember the conversation?
So the story that you told me at the time that you switched to PV was different than the story you told me 2 years later.
Okay, so here's what ended up happening on why I left Reds. Um, we weren't getting any fights,
Hmm.
just as a team. Montel is like it was Montel, Devon, and Tim who were like the main guys who
They were looking every day. Every
that
day
were
they were looking
looking
for a fight.
every day, and we just weren't getting them, and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand. I didn't understand that side of the fight game and why we weren't getting these fights. And it just it got to a point where it was like, man, I'm either going to have to start my own school, which I didn't want to, because I didn't have any money to do that, or I'm gonna have to go back to Duke's, you know. And I had talked to Tone, and he was like, yeah, like we can, we can get you back in here, but I didn't want to do that because Duke is, he's still relatively young, and Scott Cushman is his like right hand man. I would have been like, you know,
Number 3 or 4, or
three or
wherever he
four,
decided you belonged.
yeah, and I'm not a number 3 or 4 guy,
You weren't showing
like
up to be an intern.
no, I'm not, and I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky, but I know what my value is. I know what I bring to the table. Um, so I didn't want to go that route. So I sat on that, and then there was an opportunity to like co-coach at Pura Vida and at Reds. Um, and I didn't want to do that either because I didn't think that would have been right for the guys at Reds. But Pura Vida had their show; they had Pure FC, and I knew with them having that show that Montel could get fights if Montel came. So that was the reason why I left Reds, was to get guys access to fights. So when that opportunity came up, I was talking to Jake, and I was like, I really can't co-teach. I think that's a conflict of interest, but so I either have to come all the way, or I can't come. And he was like, well, we love to have you on board, so that possibility is there. So I sat on it for maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. I don't really remember. Talked to Montel like, hey, I'm leaving, and this is what I'm doing and where I'm going. Then we had that meeting at Bel Air. I told you, Rodney, Tim, like, hey, I'm I'm heading over here. And then you guys came with, I want, for the record, I wasn't stealing anybody, but your guys' goals was to fight, and we weren't getting them there. Pure Vida had the show. Jake
And it's
was
not even like it's not like we all came at once.
no,
Like
yeah. There was
Montel and I didn't switch to that school, right? We both left for Thailand, and when we came back, we did striking with you and everything else at Reds.
Yep.
And then we were told it's either us or them, and I don't know how Montel felt about that, but anybody who ever tells me it's us or them is telling me it was never us in the first place.
Yeah, well, Telly was still going back. Telly doesn't really give a fuck what other people have to say.
He still goes to the Sunday classes and shit like that. I mean, I don't know if he is now, but he wasn't going to classes anymore. As soon as that thing, that was out. And then 4 days after they told him, they told me, and all right, bye.
Yeah, so it was, and that's what happened. I'm glad you said it. But then
6 months later, we had Tim. Another 6 months after that, we had Rodney.
Rodney came. Yeah, just
I don't think anybody else came over and fought.
Just Austin stayed, Hippie stayed. Those were Red's, those were his guys. So it was logical for them to stay. But for those who came, we kept banging it out. So
very cool. And Pura Vida is where you're at now. So.
Pura Vida is where I'm at now.
Is there anything you want to say about that experience so far?
Man, it was so fascinating because obviously, I've had dealt with so many different circumstances. I was cautious. I didn't know Jake and Zak. I knew who they were. We were cordial with each other, but we weren't friends. Had a great level of respect for them, but we didn't really know each other. So I was going into a place where I really didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to work. And Jake would say stuff like, "Hey, watch how fast we're going to take off," and this, and that. And in my head, I'm like, I'm looking at, the roster of people they had. And I'm like, bro, these people need a lot of work,
Was he right?
He was right. We were both right, because the roster he had, once we came through, you, Montel, Rodney, once that all came through, the level of intensity switch,
a lot of people left once
a lot of those people left.
The whole atmosphere changed. When we got there, it was a family gym that happened to have fighters at it too. And it wasn't that a year after we had been there, that's not what it was anymore. Most of the people that were there for the family atmosphere, they phased out. A couple of them stuck around here and there, but the culture of the gym changed for better or for worse. I don't know which, but
I think it definitely changed for the better. Because a lot of those people who left, they weren't serious enough. They weren't serious about really fighting. You know what I mean? And that's
I'm talking as much about the hobbyists as I am the fighters.
Oh yeah,
right.
I would put them in that category.
We had
so he was right because he's seen this thing play out way before I did.
Jake saw the path.
Yeah, he
saw the path. That's what Jake does better than anything else that he does. Bro. I believe is he can see the path.
100%. And he predicted so many things where just like oh shit, this is happening.
Yeah.
So Zak gets his call up. That was one of the things he told me when we met. He was like, he goes, Zak is on the verge of getting signed to the UFC. And keep in mind, I've trained with Zak in the past, but I've never seen him fight. So I didn't know exactly where he was at in his fight career. So, but I'm thinking okay, again, me not having that foresight of how that game works. I'm thinking like, okay, I'll have at least a year to like, you know, get things implemented and try to,
Get
you
everybody
know,
on the same page.
yeah, not just that, just try to find my place to where I can contribute, you know,
Ah,
because LT was like their main striking coach, and a lot of our philosophy links up, but he's a full-time firefighter, so his ability to be around was limited because you know he's got a real job, who's and he's happily married, has two beautiful children, like all those struggles that I had when I was at Potawatomi, he he's still dealing with, so
his kids were little.
huh
His kids were little still
his
too.
kids were little still. Yep. So
Yeah.
it was tough for him to like invest in the process the way I could. Um, but I didn't want to. There were some culture differences. There was some philosophy difference, and me being new to the school, and I didn't want to come in there and be like, "Well, we're gonna do this, and that," and they're like, it might have rubbed them wrong. So
You
for
handled that
instance,
way better than I did. I
yeah,
kicked in the door and said, everything's wrong. We're
yeah.
doing this today.
No, there was, there were some things that we talked about and negotiated on, and we found that good balance. So I'm very grateful for LT and the conversations we had. He opened my mind to a lot of different possibilities, and he made me a better overall coach for it. But yeah, so and Zach gets a call like 2 months of me being there. And I'm like, holy shit. Like I look at Jake and I'm like, damn bro, like you know, I- well, there you go, So we're in Portland, and then you know, uh I I remember for that fight, again, because I don't have a lot of time to have like real any impact. Me and Zach are doing like some sparring, and I see he's not like, he doesn't understand like line control, you know. So I tell him like, you gotta recognize these angles, and you gotta control these angles, because if you can control how I move, you can predict when you're gonna engage or disengage, or you'll be able to predict when they're in position to engage, and then you can go for your counter. And he was like, he's like, what lines? I'm like, on the ground, like you just got to see them. So once I got him to see the lines, it was like his game leveled up,
Mhm.
and
That
that
was
fight.
what got me into fighting.
Say what?
That was what got me into fighting. Learning that changing the angle changed the dynamic. Took
Yeah,
fighting from, oh, I've seen 1,000 people punch and kick each other, and I've been doing that my whole life, to, whoa, this is a super complicated puzzle. Like, all right, okay,
yeah,
let's see what this is.
yeah. And once you learn how to read that riddle, it's an
Mhm.
endless amount of possibility. So when he went and fought Berkman, like that's what he was like. He was able to slow Berkman's aggression down just by controlling the lines. When Berkman wanted to strike, he just made one adjustment, and now
It
you know
wasn't there.
it wasn't there. And you can see Berkman being like, "Fuck," just by him moving a certain way and making those reads.
Yep.
And then 3 weeks after that, we're in Brazil. He's fighting Sergio Moraes, and I remember uh, the distance preparation, watching that fight, being like, okay, we got to adjust that, because there were some small gaps in his understanding of distance that that we needed to clean up. And then like 3 4 weeks after that, we're in New Zealand, and it just all happened like really fast, really fast. So his whole fight career in the UFC, I never really got a chance to like, sorry for that. I never really got a chance to get him like dialed in and get him in a position to where he is right now.
He was always in camp.
He was always in camp, so there was it was like test, 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 test. We didn't get a chance to study this theory, you
Uh,
know. So, like, if you watch his last fight, which was a couple weeks ago, it's one of my proudest moments. And you would think like one of his UFC fights be one of my proudest moments, but I literally was able to see the things that we've been consciously working on, the mental side and the physical side. You know, him trusting these theories and these philosophies, and how these concepts make fighting so much more easier when applied right. And that was, that's salute to him for that.
Very nice. Very, very nice. So we are 25 minutes past what I was actually kind of like halfway estimating, right? But who cares about the actual time? So the only, like, the final question that I have prepared for you is, why do you do what you do?
One reason, two-part answer. I don't ever want me to slip through the cracks again, because all I needed was someone to believe in me and to get me to like believe in myself. Someone to, one of my coaches, to like give me a hug and say, "Papa, you got this. You can do it. Trust yourself." That's why. That's my number one reason to do it. I don't want me to get lost in the shuffle of the card system.
Just so you know, I have 3 DVDs and I'm about to film 2 more, and I'm living halfway across the country. And none of that would have happened if you hadn't prevented me from falling through the cracks.
100%, bro. Thank you.
You are the very first coach I ever had. I had plenty of people who taught me things and were in charge. You are the very first coach I ever had in my life. I would not be where I am today if it were not for you. I would not be the level of fighter I am. I would not have the knowledge that I have, and it would not have expanded to the places. I would not be married to the person I am. Like, my entire life would be different.
That is true.
I wouldn't have my dogs. I wouldn't have my
Yeah.
kids. I wouldn't have my wife. We wouldn't have just sold a house. We wouldn't be living on a military base. Like, my entire life would be different if I had never met you. I probably, I don't know if I ever would have fought.
Hey, but that's why I do it. That's the number one reason why I do what I do. So that's personal, right? From a professional standpoint, it's legacy. It's legacy. I want to be. I want, when it's all said and done, I want history to look at my line of work and say he was the best that ever did it.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to tell people before we sign out?
I don't know. Yeah. I would tell them, what would I tell them if they asked me a question like, hey, what would you? I would tell them, hey, believe in you. That is so underrated. That is, and it can be so hard. It can be the hardest thing in the world to do, is to like really believe in yourself. Tone really believed in himself. Like, Chico at times believed in himself. But if he could have, you at times believed in yourself. Me, never believed in myself, right? But if you can learn how to do that, if you can just turn that dial and believe in yourself, and trust that the process is going to work for you, man, there's nothing you can't do. Nothing. That's what I would tell them.
Do you have anything coming up professionally that you want people to know about?
No, Montel's, he's in camp, so everything shuts down.
When is that? When's that fight?
I don't know the exact date,
It's
But
March 26th. I
it's-
found it earlier on
there you
accident.
go.
I
Yeah,
didn't even know he had a fight, so I'm mad at both of you. But
yeah. Well, you know,
Montel
yeah.
Jackson is fighting March 26th in the
Yep.
UFC. So you will see Solo on TV in about
Well,
6
no,
weeks.
no, you won't see me on TV. I avoid those cameras.
They'll see you in the walkout. They'll see
Yeah.
you into this. They'll see you into that. And this is your very first interview.
This
It will
is.
not be your last. So we're gonna sign out here. I'm gonna take us off of live, but don't hang up quite yet.
All right.